Dear Cosmo babies, on this week's episode, we are talking about imposter syndrome. I'm your host, Annie MacArthur, and I have my wonderful co-host with me today, Erin Gray, and one of our most favorite people to join us on this episode, Alyssia Dotson, aka Main Seamstress. All right, let's just jump right into it and get talking about imposter syndrome, because I think this is something that everybody experiences and not everyone talks about. And I think we need to normalize this conversation.
Yeah. Annie, when was like the first time in the industry that you felt like, oh shit, like
day one of cosmetology school? I sat down probably halfway through school that day, and I was sitting there like, what the hell did I get myself into? I know nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's how most people feel, but we don't talk about it. And I think we're all scared because I think we go into it like I'm supposed to know everything already, and I'm supposed to be here just to get my license, and I'm already supposed to be super passionate and knowledgeable, and I knew nothing.
Yeah, or you're supposed to look a certain way or be a certain type of person. I think also, when you went into cosmetology school, you were what we would call an elder student. You were over 22.
Yes.
And I think that can be really difficult to feel like, you're in your late 20s or you're in your 30s, or I've had students who were in their 40s and 50s before, who were older than me at the time, and they had entire lives. They had entire lives, and they'd had careers before, and suddenly they were back in school, and the feeling was like, oh man, one of these things is not like the other, right? And so I think they always kind of felt a little out of place. And I think everybody's journey is just so different. You definitely started a little bit later on that second licensure.
Definitely. I was pre-licensed, so I went to school pretty much after high school, got my aesthetics license, but was 26 when I went back for cosmetology school, and it really did felt like just a complete beginning again, in a total part of my life.
Well, I'm not licensed. And the big joke is always I play a hairdresser on Instagram. But I definitely, I constantly, I call you and whine about it, because I think a lot of times it is really easy for me to feel like a total fraud, right? I'm here, I'm giving advice. I'm taking, and I'm let me tell you all about what hairdressers want and love and whatever. And I am not a hairdresser. But I do think that the way I have to reframe that for myself is that my degree in marketing and my degree in journalism and the path that I took in the industry give me a different skill set. And that's the part that makes me unique, as opposed to making me an imposter. And so for me, it's really important, just for my mental health, that I reframe that into a positive when I can, because it is a really easy trap to fall into,
Oh, absolutely. What about you, Alyssia? Sure. When's that first memory of feeling like you were an imposter?
God, my first memory was actually starting in a salon, going through an apprenticeship program and getting on the floor, because I went through, so it was cosmetology school was a little different for me. I went through it, and they were starting magnet programs in high school. So I started while I was in high school. So for me, it was just I found my people during school. So it wasn't a weirdness until I am 18 and I'm managing hairdressers that are my mom's age. I was like, this is weird. Am I supposed to be here? So that was probably the moment that my first memory is going into hair and just feeling I don't know if am I supposed to be here? That the inner saboteur started waking up again.
You were given a lot of responsibility very early on in your career, weren't you?
Totally. Yeah. Because I'm a little bit of an overachiever. So, so it's never enough to just do or be natural. You can be supernatural. So I was I'm just going to keep going. So I had a lot of responsibility, and I didn't realize it. And then also I just didn't come into hair. I could not relate when you started really connecting with creative. I didn't come from the background of yeah, it's playing with dolls. And, like I was doing hair. That was not what I was doing as a kid. I just didn't grow up doing that. I mean, I played with G.I. Joes and I was teaching classes. Like I had all of my animals around, like stuff like that. So
And doing schoolwork with
Doing-
that as well.
doing schoolwork. I'm sitting here like pretending to drive and yelling at the kid. Like it's hilarious. Trying to mom my sister. So I just I didn't come from like, oh my gosh, I wanted to like cut all my Barbie's hair. Like I did not play with Barbies were like, no. So it's just very different. And going into a salon where you're talking to people who've been in the industry for 20 years. And I'm like, I always knew I wanted to do this. I'm like, really? Like, really? What is that like? Yeah. So if you're not careful, you do find yourself. I did find myself like, sitting there like, I don't know if are you supposed to be here? And kind of like what Erin was saying earlier, just kind of, it takes time to really get to that space of just owning the space that you take up, like them really just being content in the space that you occupy. And that was a road, but I'm so glad I'm there.
Absolutely. Yeah. When do you feel like you actually started really coming into that owning of the space that you were taking up?
Probably, God, it's a
like last week.
It's a day by day process. An hour ago. No, I would say probably it's been in the last like few years. I know. It's like when you start just really owning where you've been, because I think there's nothing better than like hearing someone like revealing than hearing someone else tell you like, you have this. Because, when you're telling yourself, you're like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do that. Like you're on your own worst critic, but at least I am. So having my clients tell me this wasn't your automatic career, I can tell, So I'd probably say midway through the career, kind of something that as you're going, you start recognizing that you're owning it.
I think it's an important thing to almost like a disclaimer to say, because the three of us right now in this conversation, we're, I would say, 15 to 20 years into our professional beauty careers. That all three of us are somewhere in that space of timeline. And I would have to agree with you. I think it's really within the last, for me, probably 3 years, I actually am starting to feel like I am occupying my space.
Okay.
For sure. And I don't think not everyone is going to take that long, but I don't think that people are so open about the fact that like even 15 years into a career, you're just starting to feel like you occupy the space that you take up, because imposter syndrome can feel and be prevalent for that long. What about you, Erin? Like, when did you start to feel like you started occupying your space and that imposter syndrome went away? Or has it?
I don't think it has. Like, I think about it. And one of the things that like triggers me the most into that, I definitely feel better about intellectually where I'm at in the industry, right? Like valuing my opinions, my ideas and strategies. Where I really feel like a fake is when we have to like get dressed and go to an event.
Yeah.
I live my like 99% life in like yoga pants and like I'm like the quintessential like Gap girl, like, you know what I mean? And then you go to an event and you've got your like hairdresser hat girl, the one, they've got all the extensions of their little hat, like on like this, and it's really cute. And I look like a farmer in those, like, and I'm just like, and I'm not like cool and grungy, you know what I mean? I don't fit into that cool, like hairdresser, Doc Martens and ripped up jeans. Like, look, I'm like a soccer mom, guys. That is who I am through and through. I'm just not that cool. And so to have to like go be extroverted with people who are like infinitely cool and like have their hats on is very difficult. And I'm immediately like, okay, this girl right here does not belong in this whole scene. So that is, I still struggle with that. I think I was able to embrace my nerdiness and my like momness when we went to Tokyo recently, because that was such an easy environment to like be very nurturing and make sure everybody arrived alive and, were safe and like accounted for and had eaten and had a snack. And so that I think was a lot easier for me. But yeah, I mean, every day I'm like, not 100% certain for sure.
So a follow-up question on this, because I feel like a lot of people listening to this podcast episode are going to identify with what you just said super hard, because I'm thinking back right now to little Annie in cosmetology school, listening to what you just said, being like, you know what? I'm worried about fitting into those cool kid groups too.
I don't look good in hats either.
Or I feel like there are clusters in our industry of you either have to fit into group A, B, C, or D. That's it. There's nowhere else to go. Why do you feel like you can't just be Erin? Why do you feel like you have to put a mask on and pretend to be somebody you're not? We just turned this into a therapy session, y'all.
I know. So I think it's really easy to look at this industry and see those like kind of main groups, right? And I think a lot of that is social media. And it's like the feeds that were, being presented. And you see like if you were to talk about like the hairdresser cliches, right? Like you'd have your super like product heavy, hairdressers who like only talk about like one particular product. You have your people who are like your extension girls, you've got your like Vivids, folks. And I mean like there are these like and then you've got your like cool grungy ones, you've got your hairdresser hat girls, like you have these types of people and it's presented to us and branded so hard that when you don't feel like you fit into one of those, very small boxes, you think well, this is all that's out there. And I think that what I found helps me is like for events, finding the right events, events that really fit me.
Good.
And I think that you translate that into finding the right salon or finding the right work environment for you. And there are so many. I mean, that's what's so amazing about this industry is there's a place for everyone. Like I am a person who is not a hairdresser and is actively making my living in the hairdressing community, right? And so even something that is very different from the norm still has a place here. And that's really kind of the beauty of our industry is that it really is so diverse and welcoming. And when you dive deep, and you walk away from that mainstream and what we're being presented on Instagram, you realize that, okay, wait, the world isn't like just full of like lip syncing Kim Kardashians. Like there are other people and maybe I am normal and maybe I do have a place to fit in, right? Like we aren't all flying private and, with like 100 cc's of, Restylane in our lips. So, yeah, I mean, I changed my environment and I felt better.
Yeah.
When we travel with people like us who are very, very invested in the industry, I feel safer and I feel like I could be me. When we go to events with educators who are delivering real education, then the emphasis is on learning and it's on real value as opposed to picture ops with like Insta famous hairdressers. Like those are my people, right? Like, so that's where I feel safe. I feel safe with students because I connect with them and I understand where they're at in their career. So yeah, change your environment.
What about you, Alyssia?
I love that.
What do you think was that like pivot point for you?
I am going to piggyback off of what Erin said. And just, I think what we really initially go into this is seeking a connection, like finding our tribe. But once we get into this industry, and I'll just put it in the first person, once I got into this industry, I forgot that you can't just stop there. You still want to find and connect with your tribe. And I think social media has definitely affected how you view that, because then you start looking to, well, am I this? Like, am I this type of person? Am I the hairstylist that does houses all day? Like, I'm the hairstylist that has to do haircuts and color, and before you know it, you lose yourself. And so really just coming in and finding what brings joy to you. And a lot of times you get so overwhelmed with like, this is Disney, because I'm in this phase. I get to be my weird, quirky self and nerdy self. And then you start seeing like, wait, but I really geek out on this. And I don't really need to see 12 different vivid colors every day in my chair. Is that weird? Before you know it, it's like a slow erosion. Like before you know it, you are the person wearing the hat, even though you don't ever wear them, or you are the person that's like, oh, I'm gonna, do like the, mohawk or whatever, like whatever it is, I'm gonna do that. And that's not really your jam, For me, weirdly enough, it went through like therapy sessions, as we're going to do it. For me, it was really going through the phase, especially when we started having like this natural movement that went through a while back. I feel like it's phasing out too, but when we went through this whole like natural where everyone's wearing like their afros and all of that, I was like, I really like smoothing out my hair and having to own that, but I went through that phase of like, that was another moment where you're like, okay, yeah, I don't wear a relaxer, but I also like having versatility in how I style my hair, whether it's wearing, my hair in an afro or wearing my hair smooth and in a bob, and just really feeling safe in that space. I mean, it's so complex, and I think you can get lost in the sauce, even in this industry.
Well, that's why we all feel fake. Like we're all trying to say we're not. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, no wonder we are. I feel like we're seeing it so much more. And I think that we all are I think we all deal with it. I think everyone is dealing with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the importance of having the conversation so openly about imposter syndrome and all of those types of things, because everyone at some point feels that way.
For sure.
Whether we talk about it or not. But I think it's such a beautiful thing about being able to talk about it, is that people are going to connect with that so heavily and be able to find those things and be able to, that will help them move forward through it and figure it out for themselves. I think a big part for me was figuring out, part of my journey of like figuring out who I actually am was weeding out who I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And getting rid of those pieces of myself, of like, I don't like this about myself, or I don't want to be like that, or, so I'm going to make sure and make those conscious efforts to not do those things or not be those things or say those things or wear those things or act that way, or like any of those things that like didn't add up to me being the true person that I am, or feeling like I'm presenting myself in the most authentic way possible.
I will also say,
I agree.
Amy and I are both sober, and
We are.
like, so we don't drink, and it hasn't always been that way. And like we used to go to events, and like the champagne was the first thing we hit.
Oh yeah,
because we felt like we needed that liquid courage to be extroverted,
right? And that's like probably such a problem, right? But I will be honest about that, and that is a conversation I am willing to have openly with people.
For sure. And I feel like in this industry, and maybe more like when we were coming, there was like this like kind of like rock star vibe. Like like, especially like at events and stuff, like celebrity hairdressers definitely felt like they were like rock stars, like in their leather pants, their bedazzled shirts, like, drugs are prevalent in this industry.
Yeah.
And there definitely is this kind of like feeling of, well, you gotta do this. And something that's been really, really freeing think for both of us, I mean, it's just being able to be like, you know what? I don't really enjoy drinking, and I don't feel good the next day. I'm 1,000 years old and my body doesn't handle it as well anymore, you know? And so like just making that personal choice, like, yeah, I'm okay to like just me is going to have to be okay. Right. Like not me plus, sort of me plus shit or me plus white wine. Like just me is going to have to be okay. But it was very uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable for probably the first 2 years because it felt like you would have a couple of glasses of wine and you could like suddenly be the person that you thought everybody needed you to be at those events. And I think that we do that with a lot of things, right?
Absolutely.
Like that costume and those masks. And I think it is, while it's hard to let go of those security blankets, it is okay to be you. And it is okay. It is okay to come into your own and like take on that power of like, this is just unapologetically who I am.
Yeah. And we're not saying that everyone needs to be sober. Like,
Yeah.
good Lord, no. For Erin and I, that was the right decision. And
I would have never made that choice 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I am just real old and real tired. So,
And the kind of interesting thing too, just like kind of dabbling on our little sober journey, was that Erin and I became sober around the same time, but it was not a conversation that was had. It was almost like this like moment that both of us were like, I don't think that we can continue putting on this front of these people that we're pretending to be. And I think it was like, it happened around the same time that both of us just started saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. You know?
Yeah. And I would say that I mean, oh my God, also not to make this like some sobriety issue or like, but I would say that we did not lose friends, but the people that we were around were suddenly different. The conversations were different. And I attribute a lot of that, not so much to the alcohol, some of it, because we just weren't up at 2 a.m. in, at the after party anymore. We were in the room with room service and chocolate chip cookies. So, but I do think the conversations became more meaningful, right? Because they were coming from real us, not super fun Erin. Because super fun Erin doesn't exist. She's not a real girl. And so it allowed, it almost gave you permission to like, just really be who you were,
Yeah.
Or step away from that.
I don't know if either of you have experienced this with your imposter syndrome at all, but for me, something that I look back on is that in those situations where you are like heavily like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Who am I? I don't know if I belong or stuff. I ended up saying yes to a lot of situations that I wish I would have said no.
Oh yeah.
Or I put a bigger workload on myself where I wish that I wouldn't have. And this goes directly back to like salon life. Like I would say yes to taking a client at 8 p.m. at night, and I'd be at the salon until midnight. And because I was like, well, I have to take this client. I have to prove that I can do this. I have to show,
and that I belong here.
Yeah, that my work is valuable and that I'm valuable, and I could, it's like that voice inside of your head that's like, no, you can't say no to a client. You have to say yes to everything that walks through that door. And for me, that was such a big part of my imposter syndrome of trying to prove myself behind the chair instead of saying yes to the things that drove me passionately inside, or that I was really excited about, or that were going to open up better opportunities to either new clients or industry events or things like that. And, because that client that's trying to get in at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, like they're not going to refer you. They're like, they're not trying to like pay your price. They're going to ask you for a discount. Like, they're, hey girl, hey, like they don't care.
I'll be later.
Those people do not care. Like they don't care. They don't care about what's happening in your personal life. Like you mean nothing to them. You were literally just like somebody in the moment that can like fix a need that they have, that, something going on. Like And I think that looking back is like, that was such a huge thing for me, was not allowing myself to put up boundaries because I was terrified.
I think, it goes back to something that Gordon Miller told me one time was, Erin, they'll let you do it for free forever. And we were talking, and I was like, well, Gordon, I just feel like I need to like I'll do this giant thing for this brand for free because I want them to see our value first. And then, I'm sure they'll want to work, in whatever capacity we were working then. And he was like, yeah, but they'll let you do it for free forever until you make them pay. And I think a huge part of that came from me not being a hairdresser and feeling like, well, I've got to do all these favors and all of these things so that people accept me in the industry and see my value. And without all the freebies, well, they'll never see value. They'll never want to work with us. So, I struggled with that until before pandemic. You know what I mean? Like it is something so ingrained in me, I think mentally, of this like, prove yourself, like you don't deserve it until you prove yourself, which, as I'm saying, it sounds like maybe some childhood trauma, but we'll jump right in there. But yeah, I think that that performative, whether it's performative love or performative acceptance, I think we all have experienced that.
Yeah. And we're in an industry of performance. That's what we do every day.
Yeah. You have to be on for your clients all the time.
Yeah.
Don't have a bad day. The customer's always right. Give them anything they want. Like those are things that we were taught. And I love where our industry is headed because we're talking about mental health. We're talking about boundaries. We're talking about burnout. We're talking about imposter syndrome, changing some of those stigmas and the way things are being taught in school. I think we all were taught very early in our career. You have to grind that, like, you just have to work 18 hours a day. And, when I was coming up, we didn't even get this and we didn't get paid. And, we all worked with like hard asses and it's different now. It's different now. There is definitely some growth in the industry, which was desperately needed.
Yeah.
And I think really healthy, really healthy.
Alyssia, have you transitioned into like a solo independent suite owner? Did that transition for you have to do with any type of imposter syndrome, or what made you take that leap into single ownership?
1000%. It had to do with it. I just wanted to get back to enjoying doing hair. When you're managing as well as doing hair gets political. Some of the events that you're doing, like you're having to go to events. I was just starting to see that for me, I am a extroverted introvert. And when I'm dealing with all of those like you're having to be on here and then you're on here and then you're segmented and like having to compartmentalize yourself a million different times, I was finding that I wasn't enjoying hair. And so it was the first step in me creating a boundary. So I went out on my own and it was terrifying because I probably, like Erin, have this like childhood trauma where you're like, I don't want to do that. I feel like I have to prove it. And so that was the first step. And it was the best step I ever made. Like I am so glad, because then from there, I was able to really fall in love with what I do again. I learned a lot about myself. That's where I learned that I also enjoyed educating. I would have never seen that if I had stayed in a salon with all the noise that was going on. And then I could kind of create my own environment because, and create the kind of space that I wanted to be in every day. Because I did come into this industry, I did not know what I was going to fall into. And drugs are prevalent in this industry. And at the time that I was coming in, it was just the thing. And I'd never been exposed to that, not on that level, And And I just didn't like it was starting to impede on me. I didn't enjoy what I was starting to see in people. And I never want to see that side, just the bad side of people and not know how I could help them, or add value to them. And so I recognized that I needed to just kind of create my own space, create the space that I wanted to allow for growth. And that was the first step. I would never say I lost friends. That was something I probably would have said years ago, but I feel like that is not, because that's a regret, and I don't have regret. So I feel like my friend circle evolved. My circle evolved. And it needed to. The only way it was going to do that is if I made changes. So
what would be your number one piece of advice to combat imposter syndrome? Especially for someone who is brand new to this industry.
Don't think that it ever goes away. You're always going to be fighting it, but continuing to know your why you got into this, why this industry drew you, why you want to touch people. Aside from the medical industry, the hair industry, the beauty industry is the only other industry where we have physical contact with people. So why are you here? If you keep that as your North Star, you may kind of have the inner saboteur try to talk, but if that's your North Star, you'll always come back,
Erin, same question.
For me, it's been getting really real about who I am at my core, not who I want to be, not who I'm pretending to be, but like 100% authenticity. Like, who is Erin? And Erin's a little bit of a grump. And like I said, she's not real fun, but I do have all of these other good qualities. And so it really has just been like figuring out like, okay, who am I really? And getting okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because that's real easy for me to be. Like, I could be her all the time. It's just when I have to be these other versions that become very difficult and exhausting. And I think when I learned to really kind of use I'm going to call it occasional abrasiveness as a positive instead of something that I felt like kept me from being like one of these sweet little hairdressers who are so kind and bubbly and all of these things. I really learned to use it as a superpower and to take control of certain situations in our business that, then allow us to do things. Like, something that I think is really interesting about you and I, Annie, is that you are so design oriented and I am very, very word oriented. And I struggle because I don't feel as creative visually as you do. But when you put us together, we have both, pictures and words. And so that has been, find your complement,
Absolutely.
Find the person that has the things that you feel like you need and do life with them, because you will then feel whole, like you're never going to have everything but you have the things that I don't. And like, you're definitely more like rock and roll and fun and like fun. Well, compared to me, and you do like see very visual and you like the graphics and all of the things that I suck at. You're so good. That's what makes us work. Not that we are two peas in a pod and exactly like one another, but that we fill in the gaps for each other.
Definitely.
And so I don't have to feel insecure about other things, because like, I know that you're there and you've got my back, and like, and we smooth those things over for one another.
Totally. A little side note on this convo is that I remember quite a few years ago, you and I were having a conversation and it was about imposter syndrome. And I remember that you were struggling so damn hard because you did not want to embrace the parts of you that are so strong and so like valuable as yourself. And I remember telling you, Erin, be the Capricorn bitch that you are and embrace it. And I remember telling you that because you were like, I don't want to like have to be the bitch all the time. And I said, that is where you're strongest. And not like Erin is not a bitch. Like just anyone who's listening, Erin is actually like really wonderful. But like in the sense of like she could take something and so strongly just like go for it in that kind of like, and a lot of times in our society, those women in particular are called bitches because they are not aggressive, but they are assertive. And I just remember telling you, be that Capricorn bitch that you are, because that is what is your strongest point about you. Because you are so assertive, and that is your strength, And I think at the end of the day, like we have to remember what our strengths are and embrace them, and we have to change that narrative too that society puts on us.
Well, if you need a hotel upgrade, I'm your gal. So
yeah.
No true. Yeah.
What about
I guess
you,
just to like round out this convo. Yeah. So like for me, I guess like my number one thing would just be, like I said before, think about who you do not want to be, because it will point you in the direction of who you are, because for me, like I literally had to write stuff down. I do not want to be like this. I do not want to be like that. And they were aspects of, people that were around me, family members, friends, and things that I was just like, I don't like these things about these people. And they were things that I sometimes saw in myself, and I had to make a conscious effort to eliminate those things. And they have absolutely allowed me to embrace the person that I truly am, And not only do like I enjoy myself more as a person, but I enjoy life more in general because of it. But like Alyssia said too, like it's never going to go away.
No.
It does.
Like, what a life.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Your life partner.
Yeah, that little imposter syndrome, they're going to follow you forever. But like, if you honestly, like these three things that we just said, like these three pieces of advice, if you take those things and just make an honest effort, an active effort to think about those and like move forward and stuff, like you will be who you are. You will find the salon and the life and the community within professional beauty that you will be a part of, And I know that we talk some trash about, big hat girls, but damn, I love me a big hat. So,
oh man, I feel bad. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, I'm like walking around in my little mini boots with my jeans and my.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
I'll move straight to Utah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I lived in Utah. I think that's where I discovered the hat girls. I was just like, oh man, can I be you? Yeah, they're great. They're great, right?
I just love them.
I'm like, show me your ways. That neutral color palette, man, it's good. Real good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for this incredible conversation. I honestly feel like we had a little therapy session. I appreciate you both so much.
Anytime we talk together.
I know. And everyone who is listening, like I appreciate you for listening through this whole thing. And please know that Alyssia will be on more podcasts because we love her dearly. So you will absolutely be hearing from her much more in the future as well. And make sure that you comment on this episode. Let us know what things you'd like to hear or talk about in the future, or feel free to slide into our DMs at Scissor&Moth.social on Instagram. You can listen to us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music. We'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.